somehow in a very polarized environment now, with social media as an unmoderated platform for people to say whatever they want, whenever they want, to whoever they like, we've lost a lot of civility in public discourse, and somehow through reason we have to pull that back. But are our politicians helping with that, or are they upping the rhetoric? I mean, we all noticed Winston Peters' speech on Sunday, which was completely over the top and has upset everybody, not just the opposition, but it's upset the Jewish community, because you don't invoke the memory of the Holocaust and Nazism just for any old insult you want to throw around. So I think we need some more maturity among our politicians and people setting a better tone for civil discourse in New Zealand.
So Geoffrey,
the problem is that we've got a group of new politicians now. There are 42 members of parliament who were new, and only 7 of those had been in any previous parliament. And so they have to learn, and there's a lot to learn. It's a very unusual environment, parliament. It takes them a long time to get their feet. And what happened with COVID disabled the New Zealand government. It was such an enormous issue. It took so much, the civil service was completely exhausted by it. They had to change the whole of the way cabinet operated so they could put it through have meetings online. I mean, they did a lot of things, but they were exhausted at the end of it. And so were the public. And I think that led to a whole disintegration of people's faith in the ability of having a good life. And I think that when the floods came and we had those terrible disasters where we've had many separate disasters in New Zealand, one on top of another, which have been very, very difficult for any government to handle. And people have to be patient because no government can do everything at once. And there are so many demands upon it that it's impossible to meet them all. And so you have to have a strong sense of community underlying that you're all trying to row in the same direction, as if there were a war on. I mean, New Zealand was fantastic in the war. We had rationing, we did all those things when we got through it with a strong sense of community, but we're dividing here, and that's not good.
Mm-hmm. Before we go to people in the Q&A on the webinar, I'd just like you both to just reflect. We've been talking about free speech. We've been talking about how the impact of social media, conspiratorial stuff makes it hard to have public debate and stay informed. And I might add, just as a member of the media, the constant stinging by people who should know better of media doesn't make you feel all that good either. So, but one of the questions I have is the state of media today. I mean, we have seen a major shift. I think the Atlantic Journal referred to it as potentially an extinction event. We've seen downsizing. I think Jack Tame will be the only current affairs host of TVNZ in the near future, and also obviously News Hub disappearing. What do you think we need to see there to ensure that we do have communication and also platforms for sensible discourse that doesn't polarize?
Well, you have to have free speech in a democracy. I remember when I was at the Law Commission, I recommended we get rid of the law of sedition, which is why colonial governments suppressed dissent. And there's no sedition law in New Zealand anymore. And it is important, of course, that you have proper discourse. But you know, I think the media, as they said in Britain a long time ago, the press gallery is the fourth estate. They are the ones who are to guard against abuse. And if your media is weakened, if its business models are entirely broken, a lot by what's going on in Silicon Valley, then you can't employ journalists. And we do have good journalists in New Zealand. We still have quite a lot of them, but you can't see this destruction of proper communication go on, because it'll end up in where the people where the government is trying to communicate to people, it hasn't got any way of doing it. That's no good.
Yes, so just coming in on that. Firstly, what's happened at News Hub is extremely distressing. And TVNZ's completely lost the plot. I mean, it has a mandate as a public broadcaster. And if it can't run long-form current affairs and can't do basic consumer affairs program like Fair Go, which has been very successful for half a century, what is it? It's also proposing to drop significant news bulletins. So there needs to be a rethink at TVNZ. I wonder how much the management taking by way of costs. What about the white elephant on the corner of Hobson Street and Victoria Street in Auckland? Do you really need a empire building like that in today's age of public television? I think that we then need to look at the state of our print media. Obviously, Fran, New Zealand Herald, part of NZME, also has radio, trying hard for business models which will generate the advertising to keep it going. I think we do need to look at the role of how we support public interest journalism. There has been discussion about the bill that the last government had before Parliament, which is still at a select committee, which only requires a platform on which media can negotiate with the platforms like Google, Facebook, etc., for some recompense, which they probably won't negotiate anyway. There's been talk of whether you should have a digital advertising levy, which would fund public interest journalism. Of course, that has to be seen as apolitical. Otherwise, it has got to be at a great distance from politicians. But by and large, New Zealand On Air and its funding mechanisms have worked. I think when we replay the record, the RNZ TVNZ merger that the last government proposed was not a stupid idea. It was like putting the old NZBC back together, where you had radio and television and presumably a shared newsroom. Unfortunately, it was so badly handled that the idea got lost in the ether and far too much was spent trying to do it. But we need to be concerned about democracy dying in darkness. If we don't have pesky journalists asking irritating questions and trying to get to the truth of the matter, we're not going to be a well-functioning democracy. So whether we like or don't like anything that someone may have said about us or commented on our views or ideas, that's irrelevant. We have to have a strong fourth estate.